All right. So, just for the sake of the camera and introduction, do you tell us who you are? Tell us your name and how long you've been at the church. And
Okay, I'm Cheryl Messick, and I have been at the church since 1992 when Brienne was a baby. I think we actually attended for about a year and joined maybe a year or so later. But so I've been there pretty long time.
yeah, awesome. So, just this last summer, you were involved in a book study called Be the Bridge. And so, I'm just curious why it is you decided to sign up. Why did you start the study?
Well, I think, well, number one, Tammy Dorcas called me and she said, they're having this study. We need to do it. And so I called immediately and got signed up because I knew it was kind of limited. But it started the summer prior when we were in Orlando at Universal Studios, and we got back to the hotel really late, and my son Rob said he wanted to walk down the street to Walgreens and pick up some things, and he ended up getting back really late because he was on the phone with his girlfriend, and I was just a wreck. And he said to me, Mom, don't you understand that I am the safest human being on earth, being a white male? And it just got me started thinking that I don't have to worry that he was walking down the street and someone may be afraid of him and turn and go the other way, or that he was being followed inside a Walgreens, possibly thinking, maybe he was shoplifting, or I don't know, that we all have fears for our children, but I don't have the same fears as my Black friends, Black mothers do for their sons. And it just, I don't know, it just hit me hard. And then later on, we went to the Whitney Plantation, which is talked about in the book. And it is a plantation that is from a slave's perspective. Like
Mhm.
the big house is like not even really talked about. And we left there with this just being sucked in the stomach, kind of similar for me was like after we went through the Holocaust Museum, it was just, it was awful. So anyway, and then with the George Floyd and the Ahmaud Arbery, and I would be on Zoom with my coworkers, and we're a very diverse group, and just speechless. And then, knowing that we had young students of color in our classes that may have to go through something similar as they grow up, and it just really touched my heart, and it's something I wanted to learn about and be a part of.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your experience. Let me start by asking you, what's something you learned? Something about racism or anything really? What's something you learned in your time during the study?
Okay, I had to think hard about my past. I went to my mom and I said, tell me about my ancestors. Were we slave owners? And she wasn't sure, but we're pretty sure probably we were. And, I was part of the early 70s being bused across town into a Black neighborhood. And I remember there was a lot of talk about that and uncertainty. And so for me and my sisters, it ended up being such a non-event that it was, a good experience. And but I think what was hard is having to look back to my past and try to figure out, what my ancestors did, where I came from, and then learning this. I had heard about Jim Crow laws, but if it was taught in my history classes, it was glossed over.
Mm-hmm.
And, just with this study, learning more about that part of our history in the United States, and second slavery, and that it's real.
I'll go back. I did jump over number 4 because it just from a segue point of view, it seemed like I would move to 6. And maybe you've answered it already, but in terms of what was hard or unpleasant about the experience, if I'm curious, like, were there moments during the study that you thought, I don't know about this? And a follow-up, would you do it again if you had to go back and do it again?
I would definitely do it again. I would recommend it. I learned, I would probably be the first to say, well, I didn't benefit from white privilege. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that seemed offensive to me at the, because I think we're jumped to defend ourselves. But going through this study, I definitely learned that because of the color of my skin, I did benefit from white privilege. And I've learned that I need to open my heart to my non-white brothers and sisters. I think that's a quote from the book that I wrote down. But because racism for them is real, and I don't know what it's like to walk in their shoes. And okay.
It's all good.
Okay.
So,
I have to break it there.
let me, and feel, again, just totally feel like we're having a conversation with one another.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question, because white privilege is something that, without a doubt, we react to. Like, I think even as I said the word to you just now, I felt a certain amount of anxiety in my chest when I said the word. And I think part of that is because we're not clear what's being said when we talk about white privilege. So just based on your experience in the discussion or what you read in the group, like, how do you understand what that phrase even means?
Well, I think one of the first things was when we talked about my ancestors were landowners.
Yeah.
And that gave my relatives, my parents, their parents, my grandparents, whatever, a leg up, because we started out in the United States as landowners.
Right.
I most likely had access to better schools, better health care, better treatment when I walked into a store. I wasn't followed around.
Right.
I think we even went down even to something as small as Band-Aids being my skin color.
Yeah.
And
so what was some of the emotion? Because you named that, like, that's a hard realization to come to. What was some of the emotion? What was the process of sort of feeling that for the first time, that maybe you did have some advantages that you didn't even know you'd had?
Well, I think in the very beginning, we had that little sheet of definitions, and I think that helped me understand, what some of these, even like white privilege things meant. But there were times when my heart was just broken. I mean, I can remember during the summer when we did this course, being in my car and just all of a sudden just crying, and I wasn't sure, like, really where that came from. There was one incident when I was driving up the street, and there was a black man at a mailbox in my neighborhood, and I noticed him, and it just hit me like, why did I notice him? If he had been white, would I have noticed him? So it just really made me, and I think a lot of our group, just so vulnerable.
Right. So vulnerability is scary for people. Is there a way in which, one of the things that I keep pushing and pressing is that we do this in the context of a Christian community and faith in a God who loves us no matter what, right? So as vulnerable as it felt, was there also a sense of safety?
Definitely in our group. I know we talked a lot about, that it was a safe place, and that we were not going to leave with all the answers, that
Right.
we left there many times without answers, and, with questions, but we went into it knowing that it was a safe place to share, whether what you said was right or wrong or offensive or that we would work through that together, that
Yeah.
we were there to learn and to listen and to grow.
So let me ask you this question then. How did you grow? How are you different, either just in terms of thoughts or feelings, even if not actions? Maybe it's actions. What did God do in you through this study?
Definitely softened my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be more informed. I want to reach out to my coworkers. I'm still, I know that when we left the book study, we were like, okay, what's our takeaway? Where do we go from here? And, I prayed that, I would know where to go with this information that we had, because it was heavy and it was hard. And not long I got an email saying that we were starting a diversity and equity committee at my school, and I jumped on it. I just want to be understanding, and I feel like this is corny to say, but be a part of being that bridge.
Absolutely.
That brings us together.
Tell me about then that new, I'm not going to get it right, racial equity team. What'd you say?
Diversity and equity. It's just a small group of us, and we've only met about 3 times, and it's always been by Zoom. But we're just we may be getting ready to do a pretty lengthy study on racial diversity in our schools and or for our school. But we did a survey to see, is it like gender diversity or whatever, but we all voted that racial diversity would be where we wanted to start.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And while I know it's a school system and probably you can't overtly, insert your faith, as Christians, we are supposed to be salt and light in the ways that we can be. And now, as a Jesus follower, you are in that room and in that conversation. And I love that. I think that's great for the sake of our city and our schools. So good. One last question that I have for you, just as it relates to this concept of being Jesus followers in the world. What do you think God wants from the church in response to these current conversations about racism, or how it is we are to, how are we supposed to be faithful to God, do you think, in this time as Christians?
I think it's love. I mean, we have to see everybody the way that God sees us. We've got to understand, get a deeper understanding of our community and people in our community, and Black, white, whatever color. We've got to tear down that bridge or that
wall.
Wall. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tear down that wall and be open to learn. For me, it helped to dig deep in the past of where we've come from with all of this, and more fully understand the history of racism, but just be vulnerable, be open, listen.
And love. And you're right. Love is by nature vulnerability. Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else that I have not asked that you feel like you really feel like it would be good to share?
I don't think so, but just the book. I think the book was, even if we hadn't been in a study, I felt like it was an easy read, or it was a hard read, but it was a good book to start with, I think, too. So.
Perfect. Thank you for that feedback.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl.
All right. Thank you.